Let me show you something that I'm working on. And it took me a while to figure out exactly how to get this uh, working correctly. And it's probably because I'm not used to using drivers and I don't have enough experience using drivers to understand how uh, it interacts with rigid bodies. Alright, now this right here is like one of those maze type tilt tables. Generally, on these, you have like a knob on one side and a knob on the other side. And depending on how you turn the knobs, it makes that table or the surface tilt in different directions. Now, I'm kind of simulating that by having this cube. And I can move this cube, on the X and Y axis, and it causes this table to tilt accordingly. If I want to tilt it that way, you know, just kind of like it would in real life, except I'm using essentially a joystick. Now, the issue I was having was, of course, this surface right here is a rigid body, and I have it set to passive, but also animated. And I was thinking if I was to like click play and see the marble drops, and then if I grab this, see, I can literally cause the marble to go from one location to another, basically just rolling along the surface. Now, the issue I was running into was right here. If I press play to play back the animation, see, the marble is moving, but the table, the surface, isn't actually moving. Because the thing is, this surface right here, because I have it set to passive and animated, it's expecting keyframes for its animation data. So my next thought was, well, let me turn the animated off, and then let me try it one more time. Press play, grab this, and then I can do this, and see, now I have a bake issue. I have to reset my bake data. So let me come here and delete all bakes. And I'll change this to 11 to make sure that the bake data is purged. And let me try one more time. Play, and then grab, and see, now it's not quite working right. And you know why? Because although this is this table or this surface is tilting like it's supposed to, because this surface is set as passive, then the rigid body system is only viewing this surface as a static object, which means I do have to keep animated. So then that becomes an issue, because this, as long as this is set as passive and animated, which is the only way I can actually control it with this driver, with the drivers that are attached to this cube, it's not actually saving the rigid body bake data of this object, of the surface itself, because it's set to animate it. So it kind of put me into like a catch-22 situation. But then I got thinking, there's got to be some easier way, or a way to make it work. And quite frankly, it was much simpler than I thought. Now, what I end up doing is taking this object, the surface right here, and I end up locking the location. That way, if I was to try to grab it, nothing happens. It doesn't go anywhere. Alright, so, and on this one, I'm obviously got the rotation locked and the z-axis locked, so that it can only move on the x and y axis, which is what I want. So I'd end up selecting both of these. This was my solution. I selected both of these, and then I move this, and with both of these selected, I can come over here to keying and then change it to location and rotation, and it will put a keyframe down here for both objects as it plays through. But the only thing that's changing on this one is the rotation, and the only one thing that's changing on this one is the location. So I could come over here to the record button. That way, whenever I play it, it starts inserting keyframes for both objects. Click play, and you can see it's inserting keyframes. Now, here's the thing. All I'm really essentially doing is baking the motion of the marble. Alright? The rest of it is set up on keyframes. But being that they are rigid body objects, this is anyway the surface, it was able to essentially guide the marble. But being that this is a passive and animate object, now it has keyframes. I'm hoping I'm explaining that to where it makes sense. It took me an absurd amount of time to figure out how to make this work, and it shouldn't have taken it long, especially as long as I've been using Blender. But I've never really used drivers and rigid bodies together, so it kind of confused me. But see, the issue I have now is, if you look down here, it started to bake data all over. So the only solution I had to that was essentially this. I have to, like, say if I want this animation to be 500 frames, I have to set the end frame somewhere further down the road. And then I basically do everything over again. Now I'm going to go to my bake data. I'm going to change that just to make sure the bake files or bake data is completely purged. I'm going to click delete all bakes, and I'm going to basically select the floor, select the control cube, and then I'm going to do it one more time. Play, and then grab. Now, once again, okay, I see the issue I ran into, and I've ran into this before. I have to purge these keyframes. So just select both objects, come down here to timeline, and press delete to purge the keyframes. Alright, let me try it one more time. Delete all bakes, change this to 11 just to make sure it's purged. Click play, grab, and once again I'm guiding the ball like I'm trying to, and the motion of the surface is being keyframed. And let's just say that's as far as I want to go. I just right click to stop, click pause, and then before I do anything else, I come over here, click current cache to bake. Now I can go back to the beginning, and I can scroll through this, and the keyframes are controlling the surface, while the rigid body system is actually, or the rigid body bake system is animating the sphere. But that's the only way I can figure out how to do it. There may be a better way, but I just thought if I ran into this issue and didn't know exactly how to solve it at first, surely someone else has ran into the same issue and had trouble figuring it out. So hopefully this will actually help people who run into this issue and have the same questions about why it wasn't working in the first place, because intuitively it seems like even though this control cube was using drivers to control this, it seems like the bake data would automatically apply to this surface, but it ignores it when drivers are actually controlling the tilt of this surface. But anyway, if anybody has any questions, let me know. I'll try to explain it to you in the comments, because I know I didn't quite explain this all that well. But anyway, later people.